Brisbane Regionals is now fully concluded. We have a couple of the top 16 lists being given out either via player Twitter, player Facebook, whatever. Support all these players if you guys will. And the wonderful Limitless TCG has been compiling results in the meantime, so it's been about a full 24 hours since the tournament has concluded. So we're going to take a look at some of the top 16 lists. I went into an in-depth breakdown of Natalie Miller's first place Mew VMAX list and how to counter it moving into next week. So if you guys want to check that out, you can. I'll leave it up here for you guys to click. And if you want to click down there with a subscribe and like, I'd appreciate you guys a ton. I just hit my hand on the table. That's really painful. All right, let's look at the top 16 lists. So before we jump right into each of these lists and opening them up, I will leave the link to this Limitless TCG tournament. This is where you guys will start finding all of your tournament results that are happening in person. Now, this will be everything regional level and higher. So regionals, internationals, and the World Championships will all have deck lists here. In most cases, deck lists will be publicized by RK9 Labs, but in the off chance that they are not, for example, so far Brisbane does not look like they have been publicized. So either RK9 Labs is doing something of their own with some data and will publish it later, or they're not going to at all. But in most cases, the players themselves will post on social media to ensure that they have, that reputation, their own list. Like the word of mouth comes from them first. And I would strongly agree that you go support these players that all performed well. So before we start looking at it, I know everyone's question is how many Mew VMAX made the top 16? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 7 Mew VMAX. So a little less than half. I know a lot of players were predicting that, half or over half would be the Mew VMAX number. And, well, I mean, 3 lists that we talked about already, Natalie Miller, Kaiwin Kababe, and Brent Tonneson all played the exact same 60-card list that we've already seen. Let's open this as an image. Makes it easier for me, makes it easier for you. We've already looked at this list in depth, but I'll just go over it one more time. It's a very straightforward cut and dry list. The really cool, innovative part about this list is the 3 double turbo energy, and there's no psychic energy, making a couple of matchups a little bit harder, like Doraldon, and obviously cards that like decks that play the Evital celebrations. Both those matchups get a little bit harder, but you have the Echoing Horn tech as well, and the double turbo energy to kind of make a boss play and take out those 2 prizes where you need to. So it's a little bit more of an all-in strategy, a little bit less reliance on that mid-game, and saying that if I can get past a certain threshold, if I can take a certain number of prizes in my first couple turns, then I should be able to close out the game at some point with a Mew VMAX using a double turbo energy and just close out the game. The 2 stadium count, like I mentioned with the Rose Tower, is a little bit something that I don't like, and I feel like that is something that's going to get exploited in the next regionals if you choose to copy this. So please, please, please be aware moving forward that this is something you guys are going to have to deal with. I will personally not be playing 2 stadiums if I choose to play Mew VMAX. Yeah. So you can see here also who played the list themselves. So Natalie Miller, the winner, Kaiwin Kababe, and Brent Tonneson in the top 16 all played this exact same 60. And you can see exactly how much it'll be to, buy all these cards, which is kind of cool. The whole deck is $150. It's pretty cheap. I'm not going to lie to you guys. For a tier 1 archetype, a tier S archetype, not bad. Now, that being said, let's look at the second place list from Louis Pozacchio. Sorry if I pronounced that wrong. I really, really apologize. It's RCs Dark. Now, this deck won the Full Grip Games 2K piloted by Riley Holbert. And it was, the deck that a couple people have been talking about, but it, smack dab landed itself into the format. And this is a little bit different from what Riley ended up playing. It's got itself a 4-2 RCS line and a 2-3 Doraldon line. Very consistently standard across the board here. 4 supporters. Very, very thick in supporters. Very, very, guaranteed that I find my 4-ofs, find my cards. 2 single strike mustard, saying that is a strategy that they are opting to go for, especially if you want to get a Doraldon off onto the board via evolving a Doraldon V into a VMAX. You can also get your second VMAX set up by skipping that Doraldon V phase, which Mew players can always exploit via a boss's orders. Now, with the horns making its way into this list, it makes it a little bit easier for Mew players to exploit just pulling an RCS back onto the bench and hitting it, and they only have to go through 1 Doraldon VMAX. But if you are still playing the 3 double turbo energy, it's going to be a tall order to go through this board. 4 quick ball, 4 ultra ball, 2 gears, acting as like a pseudo supporter, I guess, which is fine. 3 switching cards, which is super, super okay. 1 evolution incense, a little bit interesting. I guess it's just like a one-of burnable card that can, slot into anything, and also acts as just an RCS off the top. I guess like if it's a 5th card to get an RCS in theory if you're bricking or you get stuck somewhere. 2 big charm and 1 choice belt. I think I completely agree with this. I think having 1 choice belt is absolutely necessary, just because there's no reason not to have it to hit certain numbers with RCS specifically. 4 collapse stadium. I don't know if this is the stadium that I would still prefer. I think Crystal Cave might just be better. But what do I know? But Collapse Stadium and the rest of the deck seems very, makes sense. It makes sense to me. Now, third place, this is the deck that a lot of people were very excited to talk about. Peter Lowe's RCS Dark Inteleon. Now, RCS Inteleon is a deck that a lot of players had been saying is the best chance of beating Mew. With your healing cards, with your cards like your packages, you should be able to deal with Mew a little bit better, especially if you can stick a path to the peak. But this deck took a little bit of a different approach, playing that single prize Dark Inteleon deck that we've, gotten familiar with. And that deck still struggles with Mew if the Mew player knows what they're doing, or if they're playing Oricorio. So how do we supplement that? Playing RCS V-Star, giving us a chance to accelerate a bunch of energy onto the board very quickly, get some Darks onto the board, get some damage onto the board, and looks like they're playing the 1 Galarian Moltres V, establishing a threat very quickly for Mew to deal with. And if they can't deal with this Mew, this Galarian Moltres, well, then it might be lights out very quickly. But with 2 copies of Choice Belt, the Fire Wrath attack is going to go ahead and do 150 damage, which is a little bit short. Yeah, that's a little bit short of a one-shot. But you can get an Inteleon ping off early, maybe late, who knows. That can work its way into there and get the damage after 2 prizes are taken, I mean. So as soon as the 3rd prize card gets taken, you have this surprise Dark package that hits the board and does a lot of damage. A very scary deck. Playing 1 Water Energy, which is a little bit interesting, I guess, to attack with Aqua Bullet, potentially. Maybe bluff a Melanie. I'm not entirely sure why this 1 Water is in here. I feel like it's completely unnecessary. I would probably just make it a 3rd double turbo, just to make sure you get the attack off with Arceus. 2 Training Courts as your stadiums. No real other answer to path, and no path of your own. 2 Claras, indicating that late game the strategy is going to be to go Clara, Galarian Moltres, and use the Fiery Wrath with the Malevolent Charge ability to kind of clean up the game. Again, I think this is going to suffer the same problems that the single prize Dark deck does against Mew and other matchups, where you need to have a way to kind of deal with everything in general, but you don't really have much beyond your Fiery Wrath in the late game. But the RCs in the early game will give you a chance to kind of play the game, which I really like, as opposed to the other build, like the single prize Dark deck, or like Bird Box, I guess people call it, where you kind of just don't get to play the game for a little bit of the game. But this version gives you a chance to be a little bit more aggressive if you go first, if you go second, whatever, and play the game off the back of these Arceus, and then eventually you can pivot into the Moltres. A little bit more of an inconsistent build, it seems, across the board. You have better Mew matchups. This is a very cool deck. If you are committed to playing something like this, I think it's a very cool idea. Go for it. And then we're going to look at Kaiwin anyway. Kaiwin was 4th place, played the exact same as Natalie, who won the tournament. So we're going to go ahead and skip that. Cristobal also played a Mew VMAX list, and Cristobal has not posted their list. Anthony Smith went ahead and played another very interesting deck that I did not expect to see in the top 8 of this event, which is Suicune, Arceus, and Inteleon. Now, based on their Facebook post, it seems like a majority of their wins came from simply going Suicune path and using cards like this Choice Belt to accelerate their damage. And now this list is very different from Suicune lists that are normally played, because Suicune is typically played with the Inteleon line. Maybe you slot in an Ice Rider, maybe you don't. And then the whole combo is like using Capes of Toughness to kind of make it so you don't get stuck, or like you don't get one shot as easy. And these 210 behemoths can kind of go the distance. Become 260 behemoths, even making it so Mew needs 2 modifiers to do something, and it usually pays, goes in spades. So Suicune with a 2/2 Arceus line, kind of just giving us the early game option to go Arceus into power up Suicunes, or you just have that Starbirth in the early game to kind of get the ball rolling, especially when Suicune is struggling to get all their pieces up and running, especially if you go first and miss or if you go second, sorry, and miss a keep calling or something like that. One research is a little bit suspect, but I think everything else is completely fine. The 3 Melanie, the 1 Raihan, I think that's staple. The 2 Choice, 1 Cape, 1 Tool Jammer, a very interesting hodgepodge of tools. I think Tool Jammer is a little bit more niche. Something I don't really know what the use case for is. But I think it would be better slotted into like maybe a 2nd Cape of Toughness, something like that. But across the board, the 4-3-3 here, a very staple what Inteleon lines really want to do. A Pumpkaboo to bump, I guess, your own path is the idea here, to kind of make sure you can use your Starbirth, make sure you use your Fleet-Footed on turns, or your own path might stick you under your opponent's Marnie, because in the early game, if you have to path them and they Marnie you, maybe you get stuck. So I don't. The 1 capture is also a little bit suspect, but other than that, I really like the list. It seems really cool. It seems like it's got potential, and I think there's a world where this deck does well again in Salt Lake City. Now we have Mitch Nucky. Mitch is the Stabilize on YouTube. If you guys don't know Mitch, check him out. He does amazing content. He's a very funny guy, and honestly just a very lovable dude. And he played Arceus Inteleon. Now this deck is the deck that people thought would beat Mew, with 3 path to the peak, and your Arceus deck having the 2 big charms, making it so you're a little bit beefier of an Arceus V-Star, make it so even though your first Arceus goes down, the Arceus V-Star can kind of last the test of time, more or less, and then you can use Sharon's Care to pick it up and after you powered up your other Arceus in the same turn. And the idea behind the deck is just very, there. Now, Dunsparce is, I think, an auto-include because you don't want to just get clocked by a random fighting deck or clocked by, like, a random Zapdos for no reason. And Galarian Zigzagoon, just to buff up damage a little bit higher. The 210 with the Choice Band makes it 220 onto another Arceus V, so that's a pretty important number to hit. The supporter line's a little bit thinner than I'd like it to be. It's a little bit weird. There's 2 Research, 2 Boss, 2 Melanie, 1 Marnie, 1 Judge, 1 Sharon Secure, and I think the Judge's logic is if a Mew Rotom phones a Stadium on top of their deck, to deal with Path, you have the Judge to kind of disrupt that and go Path Judge, which is a similar effect to going Path Marnie. You're just getting one less card, and they don't get to set their top deck, so it's kind of a niche card here, and I think it's a very cool card in a deck like this. Definitely worth playing, in my opinion. 1 Sharon Scare, again, a little bit sus, I think, and only 2 Melanie. I don't like that either. But there is a Pal Pad to kind of recycle these pieces to use them again. But under these circumstances, if one of these pieces or 2 of these pieces are prized, it makes it really, really hard to play the game. So a little bit scared about this supporter line. I know this deck is really, really thin, or tight, sorry. So I understand why it happened the way it did. I just don't know if I like this necessarily. 4-3-3, and then 1 Ultra Ball. I don't know why though. I guess the 1 Ultra Ball is just a thin for Melanie maybe, but maybe I just prefer another Evo Incense. I don't know. Could be just fine. But besides that, I think the deck is very cool. Congratulations to Mitch for finishing top 8. It's an incredible accomplishment. He'll probably have a video up on his channel as well, so check that out. I'll have it in the link below. And to round out our top 8, we had Jordan Palmer, another amazing Australian player, piloting his own version of Mew Genesect. And this list looks very similar to the list that Natalie and Kaiwin and everyone won with. It just has 1 less phone and 1 more stadium. That extra stadium actually does go a distance against Path to the Peak, so maybe this build with the 3 stadiums might be the one you guys want to copy. Just to give yourself a better odd to not get pathed on turn 1 and lose the game instantly. But yeah, another very similar build, another very like-minded individual here. I don't know if Jordan tested with them whatsoever, but I think they're on a very similar thought process. Then we had Max Kennedy finishing 9th place. I don't know if I think Jordan bubbled in, so Max was probably the bubble out. I guess I think Jordan made it at 6 or he's 5-2. I want to say 6-2. He was X2 coming in. I saw that. So now this build is a little bit more different, piloted by Max Kennedy, playing again similar lines, just a 3 double turbo. There's 3 stadium again, like differently, and the only difference between those lists and this list, again, instead of playing a 4th cram, there's a 1 copy of Peony, making it so you have a supporter out to dealing with Path, which is super okay because I think Peony can pull you guys a little bit further on the distance train, especially when you need to find that tablet for a knockout that turn, or like tablet plus choice belt, or like 3 modifiers in 1 turn or something, and you only have like 2 Genesect draws. Like just peeing your hand away to get rid of some clunk is really good, and to start your turn by just finding 2 of those modifiers out of the 3, something like that, or finding your switch in particular is one really important card when you can get stuck. So Peony is a very strong, I think, tech card again in the format. I really like it. Then we had Dewey playing RCs Inteleon with no list revealed. We saw Brent's Arceus or Mew VMAX list, which is the same as Natalie's and Kaiwin's. And then we had Jose de la Garma playing Gengar, which I would love to see this list if it gets published, because I want to see how Gengar did against, I'm sure it feasted on Mews all day with Path to the Peak and maybe like a more VIP pass heavy build. I'm just hypothesizing, I guess. I don't know what it fell to, but I'd have to assume it's probably one of the either Suicune or like the Arceus decks that kind of took it down and knocked it down a peg, unfortunately, because I'm sure the Gengar would have just feasted on Mews all day. Then we had Shang Jun Chua, sorry for mispronunciations again across the board, playing Mew VMAX, no list as well. Hayden Matthews with an Arceus Inteleon, no list. Ryan Burt playing the RCs Dark box. Now it's unclear if this was the Inteleon version or like your 2 prize Galarian Moltres V, like Ditto V, Galarian Zapdos V, like those kinds of cards toolbox. Then we had Chihan Zhang playing Gengar as well. So we had 2 Gengars in the top 16, a deck that I did not expect to be doing this well, to be completely honest. I thought Gengar would not be as powerful in this format, but moving forward to next week, we can, I think, expect to see a lot of people picking up Arceus, especially knowing that some of these Mew lists are only playing 2 Paths to the Peak, or 2 stadiums to counter. Mew, again, coming up strong. I think Mew is definitely going to be a big presence. Besides that, I don't think there's any other statistics in terms of what the other players played, what the metagame looked like. Unfortunately, it does not look like we have all of that information available to us. It was a non-streamed first regional of the year. But Salt Lake City is in, whenever this video goes up, probably a week, less than a week. So I hope you guys are excited. I will be there personally. Leave in the comments below what you guys are going to be excited the most for. And I'm hoping there'll be a stream for that one. If you guys are at home, you can cheer me on. And I will see you guys on Monday to talk about my 1K tournament where I played Mew as well. So I will see you guys later. Peace.